Fidelity ran a study that stopped me cold. Two retirees, same million-dollar portfolio, same average return over 30 years. One ran out of money by year 27, the other was fine. Same returns, same withdrawals. The only difference was the order those returns came in. That one detail changed how I think about every ETF on this list. Because the question isn't which fund made the most money over the last decade. The question is which fund won't blow up your retirement if a crash hits in your first 5 years. Today, I'm putting 9 of the most popular retirement ETFs through a 3-round elimination test, not by their returns, by whether they'd actually keep you alive when you're pulling income and the market drops 30 or 40%. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly which 3 survive, which ones could quietly destroy a retirement portfolio, and the one account placement mistake that's costing retirees thousands every year in hidden taxes. One of these 9 funds dropped 85% from its peak, took over 8 years just to recover. It's also the #1 performing ETF of the last decade. Quick note, I'm not a financial advisor or government employee. Everything here is for educational purposes only. For your specific situation, always check with a qualified professional. The return trap. Let's start with the scoreboard everyone uses, 10-year average annual returns. SMH leads at roughly 37% per year, SPMO around 26, QQQ at 22, VGT at 20, then VOO at 15, SCHD and VYM in the 10 to 13% range, VXUS around 10, and JEPI at roughly 8 since its 2020 launch. If you ranked by return alone, you'd put everything in SMH. That's what this scoreboard tells you to do. But if you're already retired, you know the game is different. It's not about growing the pile anymore. It's about pulling from it without watching it disappear underneath you. Here's the problem with that scoreboard. If you're 35 and a crash hits, it's a sale. You buy cheap and wait. But if you're 66 and pulling $48,000 a month to cover your bills, a crash isn't a sale, it's permanent damage. You're selling shares at rock bottom prices. Those shares never come back. They don't participate in any recovery. This is called sequence of returns risk, and Morningstar found that a retiree who gets hit by a 15% drop in year 1 has roughly 6 times the chance of running out of money compared to someone who gets a positive first year. Take a guess before I show you the numbers. Which one of these 9 do you think is the most dangerous for someone in retirement? Round 1, the crash test. So now you know why returns alone don't tell the whole story. Here's where it gets real. Say you're 66, you've got $800,000 saved, you need $48,000 a year to cover your bills. A 2022 style crash hits. Here's what happens to your money depending on which fund you're holding. Let me walk you through the extremes. VYM barely moved, down less than 0.5%. After your $48,000 withdrawal, you still have roughly $748,000. You need a 7% gain to get whole again. A normal year handles that. SCHD dropped 3.2%. You're at about $726,000. A 10% gain recovers it. Very doable. JEPI fell about 3.6%. Similar story. These 3 rode out 2022 like it was a speed bump. VXUS and SPMO each dropped around 15%. Both land near $630,000. You'd need about 27% to get back. That's tougher, but not fatal. VOO dropped 18%. You're at $606,000. You need a 32% gain just to get back to where you started. Now the other end. Let me think through this. 800,000 times a 33% drop, that's $264,000 gone right there. Now subtract your $48,000 withdrawal. You're under $490,000. You need a 63% gain to recover. That's not a plan, that's a prayer. And SMH, the decade's champion, is even worse, down over 33% in 2022. And here's what most people forget. SMH once dropped 85% from its peak. It took over 2,100 trading days, more than 8 years just to claw back to where it started. If that happened while you were pulling $48,000 a year, your portfolio would be gone before it ever recovered.
Here's the myth. The best retirement ETF is the one with the highest return. Here's the truth. The best retirement ETF is the one that doesn't collapse when you need your money. After round 1, 3 funds are standing strong: VYM, SCHD, and JEPI. VOO survived with damage. VXUS and SPMO are limping. QQQ, VGT, and SMH failed the retirement crash test. But surviving a crash is only the first round, because the next test changes the picture completely. Round 2, the tax test. Here's where it gets interesting. For a retiree, the crash isn't even the most expensive part. The tax bill is, and almost nobody talks about it. There are 3 tax traps that can cost you thousands of dollars every year, and the wrong ETF in the wrong account triggers all 3 of them. Trap 1, the Social Security torpedo. If you're collecting Social Security, the dividends from your ETFs can trigger a tax cascade every single year. The IRS calculates something called provisional income. That's your regular income plus half your Social Security plus any investment income. Cross $44,000 as a married couple, and up to 85% of your Social Security becomes taxable. And here's the sting. In that zone, the effective tax rate on each extra dollar of dividend income hits about 41%. You think you're in the 22% bracket. You're actually paying nearly double. High dividend funds like SCHD or JEPI sitting in a taxable brokerage account can fire this torpedo every year. Does that make them bad funds? Not at all. It means they're in the wrong account. Move those dividends into a traditional IRA and they don't touch your provisional income. Problem solved. Trap 2, IRMA. Standard Medicare Part B in 2026 costs about $203 a month, but cross $218,000 in income as a married couple, and your premiums jump by over $2,300 per person. That's $4,600 extra for a couple. Gone. And IRMA uses a 2-year look-back. Your 2024 income sets your 2026 premiums. A big capital gains year or a poorly timed Roth conversion can push you over that cliff, and you won't see it coming for 2 years. Trap 3, the RMD time bomb. Put a fast-growing fund like QQQ inside a traditional IRA, and it compounds tax-free for years. Sounds smart, but at age 73, required minimum distributions kick in. Every dollar comes out as ordinary income, taxed up to 37%. Say you put $400,000 into QQQ at age 60, at 15% a year for 13 years, that becomes roughly $2.4 million by age 73. Your first RMD would be about $92,000. All ordinary income, and that $92,000 fires the torpedo and pushes you past the IRMA cliff at the same time. And here's a twist most people miss. JEPI, the fund paying roughly 8%, has its own tax trap. About 80 to 85% of JEPI's income comes from equity-linked notes, not regular dividends. The IRS treats that as ordinary income, taxed at rates up to 37%. That 8% headline yield, in a taxable account after taxes, it can drop to about 5.5%. JEPI survived the crash test beautifully, but in a taxable account, the tax hit chews up almost a third of its income. Quick question before we move on. Which of these 9 ETFs are you holding right now, and which account is it in? Taxable, IRA, or Roth? Drop it in the comments. I read every single one, and I'll tell you if your placement might be costing you money. After round 2, the standings shift. VYM and SCHD pass, but only in a traditional IRA. VOO passes the tax test anywhere. JEPI failed in taxable, and QQQ creates an RMD time bomb in a traditional IRA. 1 round left. Round 3, the income test. There's one more layer, and it's the part most people overlook: cash flow. When you're retired, you need income every single month. If your ETF pays enough in dividends to cover your bills, you never have to sell shares. During a crash, your portfolio stays intact. You ride it out. Your shares recover on their own timeline. You don't lock in losses. But if your ETF pays almost nothing, every dollar you need comes from selling shares, and in a crash, you're selling at the worst prices. Here's are the real numbers on an $800,000 portfolio against a $48,000 annual need. JEPI at 8.2% pays roughly $65,600 a year on $800,000. It covers your entire withdrawal and then some without selling a single share.
SCHD at 3.3% pays about $26,400, covers 55% of your bills. And here's the bonus. SCHD has been growing its dividend about 10 to 11% a year for the last decade. At that pace, in about 7 years, it covers most of your withdrawal by itself. VYM at 2.4%, about $19,200, covers 40%, with 15 straight years of rising dividends. Now look at the growth funds. VOO gives you about $8,800. That's 18% of your bills. SPMO, about $6,400. VGT, $4,000. QQQ, $3,200. And SMH, the decade's champion by return, pays you $3,200 a year on $800,000. That covers 7% of your bills. The other 93% comes from selling shares. And if the market drops 33% while you're selling, those shares are gone forever. That's the double hit. Crash plus forced selling. That's what kills retirement portfolios. If someone you care about is holding growth funds as a big piece of their retirement portfolio, share this video with them right now. The 3 survivors in your account map. We've crash tested, tax tested, and income tested all 9. Here's who's left standing. 3 funds survived every round. SCHD, just 3.2% down in 2022, pays 3.3% in dividends, covering over half your bills without selling a single share. Dividend growth of 10 to 11% a year means your income beats inflation. Inside a traditional IRA, its dividends are shielded from every tax trap we covered. VYM, the quietest winner on this list. Smallest drawdown of any fund in 2022, less than 0.5%. Over 440 holdings, so you're not betting on 3 or 4 companies. A 2.4% yield with 15 straight years of rising payouts. Boring in the best possible way. VOO. It took a bigger hit in the crash, about 18%, and the income test wasn't kind, just $8,800 a year. But it passed the tax test perfectly. In a taxable account, VOO almost never distributes capital gains. It gives you growth to keep the whole portfolio moving forward. It's not your income fund, it's your backbone. Now, the funds that earned a spot but only in the right account. JEPI belongs in a Roth. That 8% yield becomes completely tax-free. No torpedo, no IRMA, big difference. But in a taxable account, it fires every trap on this list. VXUS earns a spot in your taxable account for the foreign tax credit you'd lose inside an IRA, worth roughly 0.25% every year. QQQ or SPMO, small growth kickers in a Roth, 5 to 10% of your portfolio. They compound tax-free with no RMDs. If they have a great year, you benefit. If they crash, your core holdings carry you. SMH and VGT. For a 30-year-old with decades to recover, they're incredible. For someone pulling income, a fund that dropped 85% is a hole you never climb out of. Here's how smart retirees map it. Growth in the Roth, tax-free compounding, no RMDs, high dividend funds in the traditional IRA, shielded from the torpedo and IRMA, tax-efficient funds in taxable, VOO for near-zero capital gains distributions, VXUS for the foreign tax credit. And here's one more piece. Right now, the S&P 500 CAPE ratio sits above 41, near the all-time record. The Magnificent Seven make up roughly 1/3 of the entire index, and Vanguard is projecting U.S. large-cap growth to return just 4 to 6% a year over the next decade. If you own VOO plus QQQ plus VGT plus SMH, you could have 30 to 40% of your money in just a handful of companies. That's not diversification, that's a bet. Smart retirees don't chase last decade's winners. They build a portfolio that pays the bills, survives a crash, and doesn't hand a chunk of their income to the IRS. In retirement, your ETF's job isn't to win the race. It's to keep the lights on when the market goes dark. If someone you know is picking retirement ETFs based on a 10-year return chart, share this video with them right now. It could save them from a mistake that's very hard to undo. Which of these 9 funds surprised you the most? And are you rethinking where you hold it? Drop it in the comments. I read every single one. If you're building retirement income and want to stay ahead of the tax traps and market shifts nobody else covers, subscribe to this channel. I break this down every week.